Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 10-10 Roundtable Portal Ceremony. My name is Ace.
I'm Heather.
And our hosts this evening will be Nicole Gibbs. Raise your hand.
Hello.
Jackie Ellis. Raise your hand.
Hello.
Laura Gage. Raise your hand. And Danielle Kane.
Hi.
Hi. And we are so grateful to have some people live with us on the Zoom call. Today, we really want to keep this low key and laid back, and we want to make this very conversational. We're going to start with a guided meditation from Nicole to help ground and shield the space. Then we're going to move into a current events tarot read with Jackie and Heather. And then we're going to finish by moving through 5 specific concepts that we believe can be leveraged at this time to help move us through these fear paradigms being played out in the grand scheme of the movie, so that we can see what the truth is beneath the surface. The themes we're going to roll with tonight are choosing neutrality, striking consistency through spirit, and being unapologetically ourselves. These will be peppered in throughout the rest of this ceremony. And the concepts that we're going to cover will be authenticity, vulnerability, forgiveness, innocence, and balance. But before we get started, if you all could, please hit that like button, share this with anybody you think would benefit, and subscribe to the channels and all of our social medias to continue the conversations later. We'd be so grateful. So Heather, why don't you introduce Nicole and get us ready to ground and shield and protect the space for this beautiful time.
Okay, so Nicole, she has an amazing YouTube channel and a Telegram where she does monthly guided meditations. The information for her stuff is in the flyer. And with that, you can go ahead and lead our meditation.
Thank you very much, Heather. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
So to start this, roundtable discussion of unity and coming together, we're going to start with a meditation of grounding and shielding and just setting our space for what we have to discuss in the upcoming time here together. So I please ask you to close your eyes and really set the space for what we intend to come through, and that we will be protected and guided in the information that is coming through our higher selves and our guides, that it will be resonance for all humanity and those who are looking for answers. We are going to be envisioning now our planet Earth Gaia and how connected we are as this oneness energy. I ask you to take a deep breath in as we are connected here. Inhale. And exhale. We'll inhale again. Hold it. And exhale. Now envision ourselves shifting out of our physical dense bodies and into our light forms, where we are more aware of this information and pure light and intelligence that we will be guided and working with today. We'll inhale again here. And exhale. And as we bring in this light energy and connection of Gaia and our guides and all of the positive energy and polarity that serves only the highest good in the heart, for the heart space is where the intention and intuition resides. This is where our information that we'll be talking about resides here. And we are protected in this space as a oneness energy. We'll inhale one last time. And exhale deeply, let all the air out. And now with our energy intact and grounded and shielded, we can now carry on with our further discussions that we have as a oneness energy. And thank you. We can now open our eyes.
Okay, now you're on.
That was amazing, Nicole. Thank you so much. And it was very quick. Mine's usually like 10 minutes long. I get like nervous every time. I'm like, is everyone paying attention anymore?
No, that's fine. It's all good. Thank you.
But thank you so much for sharing that and for bringing us into the space and for connecting us all together through our consciousness. We are very, very grateful to you. So now we're going to get into kind of current events from a higher lens. The reason I really wanted to get into this, and I convinced the others to do this with me, is because nicely, very nicely. The reason is because I care still. I'm learning how to rise above the emotional triggers that the content or the stories can bring, and I can see them for what they are now. And I choose to take the higher lens, and this has allowed me to make more poignant moves in my life based on what's happening in the world. But a lot of times it can take me down. It can bring me into a lower vibrational state. So I understand why a lot of us try to avoid it. But I just don't think that we can avoid these stories anymore. I just don't think we can avoid the truth that is staring us in the face of what our civilization and what our world is going through. But as New Earth leaders, and as people who have taken the call from Father, Mother, God to speak truth at this time, I feel that it's very important that we highlight what's happening, but we bring it into that higher lens, and we show people that it may not be what they are seeing superficially. And so the way I would like to start this is by allowing our guides and by allowing Source to dictate what the topics of our conversation will be in terms of the current events, by pulling tarot, asking questions, and seeing where it goes in a flow state from our hearts while we're staying in spirit. And then from there, we'll move into working those concepts and peppering in those themes. So Heather, if you would like to start us off, and if anyone in the crowd, including Stephen, Trina, or Christina, would like to ask a question about what's happening right now, please do so. And if nobody has a question, then I can find something to ask. But I would like to engage everybody in this roundtable if possible.
And I do want to offer anyone who wants just any question answered, I'm going to offer that tonight at the end, where you can type in a question and I'll answer it with the tarot. Jackie, you can too if you want to.
Yep, I'm okay with that. Yep.
Okay, awesome.
I think there were 2 more guests as well.
Where's there?
Were there?
There's M and Maury as
Maury.
well. Yeah.
All right, hold on. Oh yeah, Mari Martin. There you go.
And
Stephen
Trina,
Smith,
if you say
Trina
that.
Howe, M. Popple, Christina.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Any of you have any questions that you would like answered? You could definitely ask and jump on and ask. Does anybody have anything specific? Okay. Well, I'll start it off.
Perfect.
Okay. So it worked out anyway. I guess it's awesome. All right. So, are all these things that are happening in the world right now connected to ascension? And will this benefit us or will this hurt us?
That just popped out.
Yeah, they do.
They
They,
do. They
fly.
fly.
And it goes. It's crazy. So I got the 8 of Swords for your first question. Let's see your second part of the question. Two cards.
Star upside down. The 8 of Swords and the Hierophant, right?
Yep. So your first question was,
Is everything happening in the world connected to ascension? And will it be a positive thing for humanity moving forward, or are we looking at what a lot of the fear paradigms would like us to believe that?
I'm going with the fear paradigms just because it is the 8 of Swords, and the 8 of Swords talks about being trapped in your mind with fear.
So something that was really powerful was me and Heather just decided to pull cards, and I just asked her all of my, my conspiracy theory questions and all the fun stuff that I don't really look to find answers to too much anymore. I just kind of follow the storylines and just know what's happening. And basically what we got was, we choose to believe what we choose to believe, and we choose to see things from the perspective we choose to see things from. We can believe that the things happening in the world is for our detriment and that everything's over and we're screwed. Or we can look at it from a lens that everything is happening for us, and that if we can take that higher lens and apply it to our now realities, what's happening materially in front of us, we will be protected moving forward, and we will not experience the chaos that many will, because the chaos is actually in their heads and not actually happening from without as much. Do you have anything? Do you have anything else?
No, I'm clear
Go
on
with
my
that
end.
first part?
Yep. So go ahead and do the first question on your end, Jackie.
3 of Pentacles, which generally means that there's some sort of teamwork that's going on. So and every small step matters. So our individual, what I'm getting is our individual, how we approach life and our individual growth and expansion is helping with ascension. There's also an element of how we view the events that are going on will help us not repeat.
Okay.
But other than that, there's really nothing.
And your second question was?
Is this going to benefit humanity? Or
What did you get?
So I don't know. To me, this is kind of conflicting energy because we have the Hierophant upright and the Star card in reverse. So
show 'em.
the Hierophant can talk about higher learning, commitments, and the Star card is about like healing. I always feel as the healing card, and the fact that it's in reverse is non-healing. So
Choice, duality.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Well, I
like,
want to,
Which is interesting because I only pulled one card for that question, and it was the Magician. And the Magician is our matrix of our mind, meaning that it's literally a fresh slate if we choose it. We can stay caged, like there's a cage behind the Magician. We can stay caged in our thoughts, or we can
Wow.
free ourselves from our thoughts and choose our reality.
And then what I just pulled clarified that with the 8 of Cups, which is talking about walking away from what's no longer serving you, and the Page of Swords, which is like a new beginning of your mind for me.
yeah, and I want to say
Bonnie.
that too. I feel like this is an opportunity for when you're faced with being trapped, right? So you're trapped, and that's your opportunity to say, hey, I'm not trapped, and getting out of it, or choosing to stay and keep that version of your story.
Yeah, literally following your bliss is your freedom.
Stephen Smith says that it's all designed for energy extraction, and then when we tune into intuition, what we can create, and when we tune into our intuition and what we can create will protect us from having that energy sapped. Like something I noticed is when I look at too much I call everything propaganda that is like based in trying to persuade somebody of a truth that may or may not be. And so it's like, when I watch too much propaganda, it does start to affect me and my vibration changes. And it does feel like my energy is being extracted. And so it's about balancing and finding that balance between knowing, whatever that means, what's going on, and accepting that everything's going to be okay. I really don't need to know what's going on. I'm just interested in doing so. For you, Laura, I'm confused by you sometimes because I feel like you do know what's going on in the world, you just don't ever talk about it. And so I'm wondering how you feel right now that we're speaking about current events like this. And I would love to hear your perspective if you want to give it, but I also understand that if it's like kind of like it doesn't matter, then I also understand that as well, because at the end of the day, does it? So I would like to hear from you if that's cool.
I think it does matter because those who need to follow current events in order to see the stories and to see like actually like recognize the stories for what they are, that this is a discernment that people are learning. And so if they need to engage in that, then they will. And if they don't need to engage in that, then they won't. You know, I think for me, I don't engage in it because I spent many, many years engaging in it. And I have a very singular story for the most part that's going on, but the people who are still working that out and understanding the creation and the destruction of the own stories in their own personal lives and the bigger life, they need to engage in it.
It's amazing. I love that.
And
Good question.
can I also say something too to that? I feel like there's a lot that still entertain it for entertainment because they don't want to focus on their internal life. So they'll look at like, oh, did you see the Johnny Depp, whatever, and I'm like, really? We're watching that? Like people are really engaged in that. And they needed that entertainment in their life because something was really going bad in a relationship. Like that's what I found often in the collective that is
Mhm.
entertaining that type of
Storyline.
show, should I say.
I think there's that, but I think there's also still a very sincere belief in the story that external change from the outside in is going to cause something
Mhm.
significant to happen. And I think
Absolutely.
really talking to people about reconsidering specifically that story is important.
Yes. I think there's many layers to the external, to their internal world. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, so I pulled the King of Pentacles. That was the next card that was beyond the two that I originally pulled. And the King of Pentacles is literally leading yourself towards your future in a very determined way. It is knowing where to invest your time,
I love that.
knowing how to invest in the things that matter to you for your future. Which is essentially kind of like, and if you look at the comments that have been kind of happening from Ace and Laura and Danielle, it's definitely like it's woven through those
Mhm.
comments, is like we're all like, it's important to choose what you want to watch, choose what you don't want to watch, how you want to engage. But it all comes round to how are you investing your time and your energy for the future that you want to create.
I love that.
Yeah. What illusion are you going to play in today?
Mhm.
Yeah, because like Danielle, like you mentioned earlier, like people are choosing to see what entertainment or whatever can like,
Yeah.
because of other stuff that's going on in their life. There's that, to me, that's avoidance.
Oh yeah. Well, and
Right.
I see it in my own family. I mean, I
feel it
directly
myself.
I see that I often see like, because I actually choose to withdraw from this, but when I'm at family gatherings, they'll start talking about things and being like, wow, that's deeply interwoven from, the news or like that I couldn't even believe my mom was referring to the Johnny Depp trial. Like it was just it was really funny that she actually took the time to really watch it. And so, I just was surprised and there's a lot going on in her life with my families. Her and my dad have a lot going on that they need to work on. So
It's
it
a
was,
way to numb.
yeah.
It's a way to numb out, right?
I also find
Especially
it something really important too, is like, if nobody paid attention, then would anything happen in terms of like what it is we all hope for, which is, justice for the children and all those storylines and narratives. So I do believe that there are some people here who designed themselves to be here at this time, shedding light on all of these storylines and narratives that are occurring. I thought that was my job at the summertime of 2020. I started doing conspiracy videos, but within 4 videos, I realized how quickly that I was becoming more negative and how quickly the message was being lost. And I realized that I didn't want to create exactly what Jackie was talking about. I did not want to create an existence where I'm constantly in this negative darkness, feeding it my energy, because I, at the time, and still kind of now, was not strong enough to handle that the way, say, someone who designed themselves to be is. And so I had to make a conscious decision that though this is my passion, I feel helping humanity grow and evolve is more of a passion that's more sustainable for me moving forward. And so I'm really liking the flow of this conversation, because though we're pulling tarot, it's sparking great prompts for us to speak about the things we honestly wanted to speak about. And so why don't we kind of try to bringing these concepts that we have today into the fold with these questions. Does
I think
anyone have
Nicole
any?
has a question.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nicole. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah,
Sorry
before
about
we kind of, that's okay, before we kind of shift a little bit, I did want to tag on a little
Please.
thing because I've seen the same way that we're all talking about, the different perspectives, whether or not, engaging with the news is something, that is beneficial or not. But I have to say, in my personal experience, first kind of, I don't know, going down the rabbit holes when you're learning about everything and you feel all the feelings, you get angry, you're like, why is this happening to us, right? And all these things. And then in my situation, some of you know that.
Oh,
No.
No.
How's your back?
It was like a cliffhanger.
no. Okay. Well, you froze when you said how did she end? She was like,
And my
"Well,
personal
as you
experience.
noted," and then we were like,
Okay. Yes. So where I left off, in my personal experience, I have grown up in a religious Mormon church. And with that, whenever I hear these, events or things that were happening while I was going down the rabbit holes, okay, so different time than me now, but I would share these things with my parents and stuff, and they would be like, why are you even talking about that? That's so scary and stuff. So they choose to close off completely. They don't want to hear anything about the news. They don't want to hear anything about what's going on about, I'm learning about, the agenda that's going on. So like, for instance, HARP and how they're manipulating weather and things like that. But when I try to even talk about something that is like real and happening to us, again, no, we don't want to know about it. We don't want to know this is happening. So at that point, we can't get further and talk about discussions and come together as a oneness, which is the only thing that can get us through, as we know. I mean, we come together and that's how we get things done, is one person standing up. Their voice does not carry out, but as we come together and build our magnetism, anything's really possible. So I think there's a fine line of how you feed into it. You have to have your intuition. You have to be just aware that it's going to be fabricated. You're going to see different perspectives of every single story. But at the same time, we can't not know what's always going on, right? Because it's being done to us in a way if we aren't aware. I think that's my little plug there.
when you said fine line, the word I got before you said that was balance. There's a balance.
So go into that a little bit. The
Yeah.
perfect segue. Go into a little bit of that, Jackie. Thank you.
Well, I actually had
You
a
need
question
to
from
know
someone today
enough,
too.
but
Alright.
not necessarily go down the deep end,
Mhm.
right?
Because it's a perfect segue. I'm gonna let Danielle ask her question. Then we're gonna talk about balance, because M talked about how she said she found she wasn't helping. She was stirring the pot and growing deeper in the muck and mire. So she drastically chose to quit everything, which I agree with. And then I wrote, yeah, especially when we're arguing semantics in comment sections of videos with people and stuff. It's just so low vibrational. But we'll get into the balance after Danielle makes her point about what Nicole said. So please, Danielle, take the
Yeah,
floor.
well, I had someone today ask a question. Do you really think more people are going to wake up? So that was something I wanted to ask the tarot. Like, is how many people are going to wake up?
Okay, well, we can, while you're pulling cards on that, I pulled a card and it's lighten up, and listen to this. Listen to this. It says, what's happening for you right now can turn out well, but you need to find a balance
Oh, wow.
between the light and dark of the situation.
I love that. That's great. Well, and it was funny in that conversation of talking about people waking up, we were talking about some of the evildoers, and I'm like, well, they're all playing a role, we have to have some of the dark, right? We can't have it all light, so we can see that. But how do people respond? How are people going to respond to the next stages of this journey that we're on? Are people going to go into fear, or are they going to get out of that stuck mindset?
What was
what
the
I
question
got,
again?
if more people are going to wake up, and what I got is yes. We have the Four of Swords in reverse. Four of Swords upright talks about deep rest, taking the rest. So for me, this is saying yes, you're going to come out of that rose-colored glasses. and step into the Queen of Swords, which she's very sharp in the mind. She speaks her truth. Yeah, so that's what I'm getting.
I got Strength, which is a matrix of our physical reality, which is a fresh new beginning
Mm.
for people. So
We also need to define, what does that mean? Waking up. What does that even entail? Because how I wake up is not how Heather wakes up in legitimate life, right? Like the way I get out of bed is the way Heather gets out of bed. So, Laura, being that you actually practice Eastern medicine and you're a midwife, so you've had experiences with people that are going through profound and intense shifts in their life. Like one moment they're alone, and the next moment they're a mom and a kid. You know, that's a huge transition in a moment's notice. Based on your experiences, your travels and things, you like, what does it mean to wake up? And how can we better cast this sensationalized term to represent from a higher lens what it is we're trying to convey with neutrality, consistency, and being unapologetically ourselves?
Are you kind of asking like how you help more people wake up?
No, I'm saying more so, how do you tell when you can tell someone's ready to quote unquote wake up, and what does that look like? What does that look like for you? Like
Don't
when,
matter.
huh?
It's going to be a very Laura answer, which is that it doesn't matter. The goal for me, if I'm thinking about myself as an independent person, is to try to operate more in unconditional love and unity, and recognize that we're all one. And the more of us who go towards that, point our hearts towards that, the more people will recognize it and it will happen in them. But I don't know, like I hear you ask that and all I think is I don't have control over that.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just trying to better help the audience understand. Like we use these words all the time and we don't define them. The awakening, you're wake them up. What does that mean? Like we don't really describe and talk about.
So to me, what I think that means is when you're awake and you see reality for what it really is, you can decipher the game. You can see the chess pieces being moved. You're aware of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's
I got a message to pull
Good one
two
here.
cards on that question. The first one was the Knight of Pentacles, and the second one's the Hangman. So the Knight of Pentacles nurtures your accomplishments. It encourages you to nurture your accomplishments and take a slow and steady movement forward, each one step at a time. One step at a time. And the Hangman is literally your significance of your physical reality. So it is awakening to a different perspective than you had before. And each time you do that, you develop a deeper relationship with who you are, who you're meant to be. And when you can do that, you start seeing your life that you've been living in from a different angle.
I love it. I love that. Different perspective.
Yes, we just plant seeds. When the person is ready to water and nurture it, the plant will grow. I want to kind of open a discussion in this. We were talking about this earlier today.
Thanks, Mari, for that. That was beautiful.
Planting seeds. When does it become a infringement on our sovereignty? And is it infringing on sovereignty to blatantly say something to plant a seed? So what is your guys' input on that?
Like talking to someone when they may not, like saying something to someone that you think they need to hear, but they may not be ready to hear.
Yes.
Red pills, so to speak. So we want to red pill everybody. We want everybody to wake up. But, you know, sovereignty states that you'll wake up when you're ready to wake up, and only when that divine time comes. So are we invading people's sovereignty by trying to shove red pills down their throats so that they wake up to the reality that we believe is around us, but it may not necessarily be around that person. Danielle, what do you got?
Yeah, I think that you'll know. I think it's an energy, because I've been that person that I want to wake everybody up around me. When I was first, I woke up completely from being a victim to being like, wait, oh, like the world is in my favor. I see now, like I saw from a different perspective of my own life. And then when I started to see things for what they were, I didn't understand why people couldn't see. It was like blame. It's like, stop. Like, do you not see the red stop sign right there? So I would put the red stop sign, and then I'd start to get this frequency, this energy just being like, no. And I'd start to they'd get further and further away. So I was like, okay, I can't do that approach, because it's just going to tear us apart away from love. Because that's ultimately what we all are, is we're all a one consciousness, and we all need to get to love. That's one thing we can all pretty much agree, that we all love being loved, right? We all love coming from that place. So I realized at that point that was pushing the envelope to a polarized position. So yeah, I just would slowly plant seeds and let them wake up themselves. Like if something didn't feel right with something that they were doing, I'd like, oh, so that didn't really resonate with you. And that was something that maybe they would have just signed up for before, some kind of, procedure or something, but they were more cautious because of the way that they were feeling. Does that make sense? I know I'm throwing a lot
Yes.
of random stuff.
Yes, because something we were talking about earlier today was about how we need to learn to accept each other and ourselves for who we are and where we are on that path. And maybe because we want our family members, our friends, our loved ones to be further, whatever that means, in this awakening, whatever that means, maybe we're not accepting them, which means in reality, that's a reflection of our ego for not accepting us for where we are. So,
Right.
Nicole, how do you recognize, because I know you and I are very kindred. Like, I know how passionate you are about the truth. I know how passionate you are about this community. You've been doing this for 4 years straight. You are consistency to the key, and I respect you so much for that. Like, how have you been able to check your ego over the last several years and move to a space of love, of unconditional love, of letting people be where they are and not taking it personal when they may be a certain sort of way that you don't approve of?
Yeah, so I definitely did come from that space at one point, as it's part of the awakening process, like whatever awakening is. You kind of do get triggered a little bit when someone doesn't quite see your way, or the truth for you. And so I spent so much time, I felt like, just trying to be like, how can you not see this, and trying to word it differently or find different sources or something that be like, there has to be something in here that will flip their switch. But I just learned over experience and heated arguments that get nowhere except for causing intense energy that doesn't benefit anyone, but ciphering energy. So I've just learned over experiences to, you can only say so much. And once you kind of hit that resistance of, and you can feel and tell when someone's going to kind of come back at you, that's all you can share at that point. And you kind of have to move on from that conversation and hope that that seed you dropped might eventually get watered or activated throughout another point in their experience of their life. So that's really helped me in myself too, that when I get passionate or triggered or anything like that, to be like, bring it down, just, it's not the same for everybody, and it will be their time. And just remembering that it's all in divine timing.
Thank you. That was wonderful. All right, so we're talking about leading with love, but we're in a very emotionally heightened part of this journey, of this movie. And a lot of people lead with hate, with anger, with all these emotions, repressed emotions and traumas that they're expressing through the external stimuli that's happening in front of them. So, Laura, when you find someone like that, and you're dealing with someone who may be a little irate, who may just be just so passionate and they just don't understand, how do you receive them with love? How do you not get triggered? This is something I deal with. Is I tend to be a mirror. I reflect people's energy. I whatever their energy is, I'm going to reflect it back. But I'm realizing now that might not be serving me as much anymore moving into this new season of my life. Not only is it autumn, but I truly am moving into a new season of existence as a human being on this planet. I would like to learn how to receive people specifically their egos with more love, with more calmness, kindness, but yet I tend to still be that crusader that comes out. So how have you been able to receive people's egos with so much love and balance, letting them be who they are while also standing your ground and not letting them affect you negatively?
Right. Well, I come from a place of curiosity. I ask them, what's the hardest part? Which usually brings people down quite a bit, because there's this, I think, compassionate part of it of, yeah, what is the hardest part? And what I have found when I ask that question, what is the hardest part? It doesn't ramp people up again. It brings them down a couple notches when you're talking to someone. And then from there, I usually ask, what's your plan? And I think it is related to this idea of, we don't know what's going to turn on the lights for people. Some of the craziest, smallest things in my life have what I refer to as turned on the lights, where all of a sudden you're seeing everything for what it is. And we have no idea what that is for people for the most part. I think sometimes because we get messages, we get a glimmer, but we don't, the other person gets to choose to acknowledge the lights turned on or not. Right? So I usually meet that with that there. So I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, like this idea of unconditional love, and meeting even the hardest people in your life with unconditional love. And what is the balance of when you say, I'm gonna take a hike now. And it's your own unconditional love for yourself.
When that gets crossed, right? Like when the unconditional love for another starts to cross or blend into the unconditional love of yourself, that's when you have to make a decision whether, is this serving me anymore, or is this actually distracting away from the love I have for myself? Because I've learned that when we compromise ourselves to satisfy others, we're actually taking love away from us, and that is what decays us. That's where my
Yeah.
sicknesses come from. My stress comes from what I'm not giving myself. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and I've talked as a practitioner before, just because like I talk with other practitioners, and we've talked about, like, Laura, we unconditionally love our people, right? And but there's this idea of, a colleague of mine said, Laura, if a patient of yours threw themselves down the stairs, would you walk down to them and say, oh my gosh, this is so horrible, this horrible thing happened to you? Or would you say, okay, let me help you real quick, but why did you do that?
I agree.
Like, so these are these things that come up when you're working with people. Unconditional love isn't not questioning what they did. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. What do you got, Jackie?
It's knowing when you're going to walk away isn't necessarily dishonoring them. It's actually honoring them. So it doesn't actually, when you step away and create space for yourself, you're actually honoring their journey as well, because they are no longer able to stay, or at least it's giving them a choice to either stay mad or projecting, stay in that state that they were in when you were there, or they can choose to just start to let it go. But if you're not there, they're no longer triggered by your presence, right? And when someone is triggered, it's an ish them. It's not an issue, it's an ish them.
I like that.
I like that a lot. And it's true. It's
Right?
just what's happening within you.
Yeah, if you're triggered, it's an issue. If they're triggered, it's an ish them. It's simple. Now, if you're both triggered, then you each have to deal with your own issue. Right? So, but at some point, the space needs to, if you're giving yourself space because you need to work on your own stuff, then that is honoring yourself, but it's also honoring the other person.
So
I love
what you're
that.
saying is by us looking to give ourselves more unconditional love, we're actually going to end up giving the others more unconditional love because we're filling our cup, and with that overflow, we'll be able to keep feeding others.
You cannot come from a loving place if you are not fulfilling your own self-love. The love, if we can't express love if we are not willing to receive love or fill ourselves up with loving energy.
Facts.
We have to be overflowing with love in order to unconditionally express love. Right? And then on the flip side, if we are not feeling like we are worthy enough to receive love, then we can't be in a place where we are unconditionally loving ourselves.
I agree with that. Danielle,
Yes.
do you have any stories of certain times where you've been able to receive someone with unconditional love that may have been coming at you twisted, trying to get you to rise up with them? And how were you able to kind of stop them in their tracks and not allow for the event to escalate into something that was uncontrollable?
Yeah, my daughter and I have this karma together for sure. She was born like with a lot of fire energy. You guys know we've talked about this, and she's like literally the opposite. She has like no air in her at all. I'm a Aquarius, I'm like a big air sign. She's Leo, like all fire. So what I found was the mother that I needed. I thought that was the mother that she needed, and it turns out that I had to reevaluate my role in giving her the space that she needed, and to try to communicate in the best way to know that I'm here and supporting and loving her, but giving her the space that she needs. Because the closer I get to being like, oh, cool, you need someone to be there. You need someone to love and embrace you. You need this, And she didn't need that. And the fire and the anger got worse and worse. And she tries to dominate me a lot. And I don't want to be, we don't even need to even talk about dominance. It's just about, I'm here for you to support you to be the best version of yourself. So it's still a work in progress for sure, but she does. There is this level of strength in her that I'm revisiting with issues that my sister and I had growing up. My sister very much dominated the whole entire household, and I basically hid and was on eggshells and just tried to keep the peace and quiet. And now I need to face this type of energy now as an adult, being a parent. So it definitely is. It's funny when it's your own child. I don't know what it is. It's like you don't see things the same way as an adult, or like trying to talk it out. It's like you've got to sometimes be creative with just, you have to become an inner child. You really have to connect with your inner child again. Okay, how would I feel going back there, and let's talk child to child. So that's really helped.
I mean, your kids are fractals of you, so
Yeah.
they contain the trauma, some of the traumas that you haven't faced in your life or in the lives in the past. Heather, why don't you tell the story? Before I want to segue into vulnerable communication and let Nicole talk about that, because it was a topic she was very passionate about. She has a story, but I love Heather to tell the story about you and Chevy, how you shared a memory, and how that memory you had to release together because you couldn't get it all, because she had half of it and you had the other.
It was bizarre. So my daughter had this fear of fire, like really bad fear of fire. And it was like, it has to be a past life thing, Well, segue, I had envisioned a past life for me where I had really long red hair. And I was just laying on the grass, and someone came to me and said, this little boy is sick and is dying. Well, I was a very powerful healer, and I went, despite what I knew was going to happen, because I really cared about this little boy, I went and I healed him and saved him. But because of that, I got burned to the stake, because I'm a witch, right? I'm a witch. And what was interesting is when I took Chevy into the meditation, she actually described me and what I saw in my vision. And she remembered actually burning at the stake, where I can only remember being dragged to the stake. And so it was just very interesting.
And then we did our emotional release technique. They did it together, and she's been able to deal with fire with a little bit more ease and grace since. But it took the two of them coming together, two different generations, two different parts of the overall fractal of who they are, and that's my opinion, fractal theory, and they were able to heal that memory together by releasing it. So that's just how powerful our DNA is, how powerful we actually transfer traumas to one another. Nicole, going off of the vulnerable communication that Danielle was talking about, we know that you had a major win over the last week with your ability to help your patients. Nicole, in her government job, she is a sonogramologist.
Electroencephalogram
Close,
technologist.
super close, super close.
EEG is all you need to know.
She puts the cool things on your brain and looks at your brain waves. And I think it's amazing. It's such an awesome matrix job. You know, if there's one thing to do, I mean, why not work on the heart of the brain and really get to understand it from the actual anatomical, or the actual anatomical level, and then be able to bring it into spirit and be able to bring all these insights that you have. And you were talking about how through vulnerable communication, you've been able to improve the experience of your patients. So if you want to quickly go into that story and then explain what you wanted to talk about from a vulnerable communication, I think it's a perfect segue into that concept.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, I honestly got into the job in the first place because I feel like it's a starseed thing. As a starseed, I just found the brain so fascinating and just evolving, expanding, you know, everything that's mysterious about the brain that we're still learning about. So it was easy for me to get into this field, and I actually had the you know, the benefit of doing my school in a huge hospital in Oregon, the biggest hospital that they had. So I had really good training. I came from top of the line technology, and that's at first all I knew. So recently, not recently, sorry, and in the last 3 years, I've moved from Oregon to Colorado to a smaller hospital that isn't quite to the technology that I was used to. And with that specifically is we have electrodes that go on patients' heads that, so for instance, if someone has to go to an MRI or a CAT scan while they have their electrodes on, we would have to take them off and then let them go to the imaging and then put them back on, which you would think it'd be simple, but it's an hour and a half to 2 hours. It requires a lot of scrubbing and glue, and you know, it's not very good for the patient. And also being a starseed, patients come first. That's like huge in my book. So making sure the patients' heads were just safe and just the least amount of skin breakdown and all these things that could potentially happen of people going back and forth of having their EEG reconnected.
You were saying
So
something like
something
that,
that-
if you take them off and put them on, that it could actually do nerve damage to their heads.
Yeah, you can eventually you can get permanent dents into your scalp. You can see down to the bone, and you have permanent skin damage. So it's a very serious thing. And for some reason, this hasn't been looked at very well, I guess, at this specific hospital. So I took it upon myself as soon as I got to this hospital. I was like, how do we not have this technology in our hands? Because, you know, we're in 2020 now. We have the ability to have this technology to help our patients, and just all in all better. So the last 3 years, this has been over the 3 years of me being at this hospital. I have worked very diligently to get different representatives from different MRI compatible EEG electrodes to come out to our hospital and do education for the hospital, the CEO of the hospital, and everybody to understand from our perspective what we're doing. Because EEG is so small, no one really knows much about us. We're just kind of fly under the radar a lot, which can also have problems. So I addressed this very quickly. It took 3 years though of pushing the MRI imaging team to get on board, to get all the doctors on board, to train all the nurses. I spent a few days of training all the ICU nurses, all the MRI staff of how to work with them, what they look like. So it's been a lot of time and energy, but officially this week we got the okay to roll them out and go live. And now patients in our whole hospital can have the ability to not have their EEG reconnected and disconnected and have the possibility of having skin breakdown and all these things. So it has definitely been a huge, huge win. And I thank you for letting me share that story, because it's like everything to me.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
how was being vulnerable with the people at your job in terms of your communication? How did that aid in you getting what it is you desired for your patients through the persistence and consistency that you showed?
Yeah, definitely. Vulnerability cannot be stressed enough, to be honest, and just patience and persistence. I mean, it's all those things really. Just knowing that you're gonna get pushback, you're gonna have resistance, but if you stay consistent, you have, you know, faith and trust that this is going to be something that's going to benefit, and that's the thing. If it's going to benefit the whole or going to benefit humanity at any point, it's going to work out eventually. And that was what I had to keep in mind. I was like, this is going to work out, because how could it not? It's such a benefit, and it's good, and it's wholesome. I mean, if it fails,
Oh no. We're gonna give her 2 more seconds, 3 more seconds. Come on, Nicole.
Breathe. Maybe it'll release her from a freeze. I was like holding my breath, and I was like, maybe that's not helping.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Oh, Nicole.
Well, she'll come back. So something she kept talking about was consistency. Like, of all the people I've met so far in my community, oh, there she is. There she is. Perfect. What I was saying.
apologies.
That's cool, Nicole. What I was saying real quick is that you're one of the most consistent people I've ever met, and you were talking about how important consistency is in making the right things happen. What I've come to realize is that the easy things come through shortcuts, and they're usually short-lived. It's the more difficult journeys that last. And so this took you 3 years because it was meant to last. And so you had to earn it in a way. How do you stay consistent through the energies coming on the planet, through the storylines and narratives, through all the stress of like, how do you stay consistent, and continuously stick to what you believe to be true and to be right for you? Oh, she froze again. Oh no.
How about being a spiritual warrior?
I like that. We'll talk about spirit. Oh, there we go. We'll talk about being a spiritual warrior. You answered it, Jackie. That's perfect. Okay.
The card literally says, show you are a wise leader, which is what Nicole did.
Show
Thank
you're
you
a
very
wise
much.
leader. There you go. It's perfect. All right. So we're going to segue now into just breaking down these concepts, and then we're going to end it with a prayer. And it should be not no longer than 10:20, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time for the end of this. Now, again, the 5 concepts that we've been sprinkling in and kind of circling the drain on are authenticity, vulnerability, forgiveness, innocence, and balance. Jackie's hit on balance. Laura's, no, I've hit on authenticity. Nicole's hit on vulnerability a little bit, but let's kind of get into the reads with these concepts and apply them to what's happening in the world around us. The first concept I've written down is authenticity, which is the one that I felt compelled to lead, because one of the things I've struggled with, even though I make a lot of content, I've made hundreds of videos, I've written hundreds of articles, I've done these ceremonies, I've done all these stuff. It's still difficult for me to do them. It's still difficult for me to believe that I have anything, I have something to say that it's worth listening to. I come up with all these storylines and narratives in my head, but I was watching this YouTube short, and it was about the 10th anniversary of Superbad, and Michael Cera, who was one of the stars in it, he also co-directed it with Jonah Hill. They were talking about this time that they were doing casting, and they were trying to cast the third star of that movie, and that Jonah Hill didn't like the guy that ended up being the one to play in the movie. But what it turns out to be was the guy was so authentically himself, and he didn't care that Jonah Hill was this big actor and this amazing director. He was just talking crap to him the whole time, because that was the whole point. The whole movie's just them talking crap to each other, and he just was he was just unapologetically himself. And Jonah Hill didn't want to work with him, but Michael Cera convinced him. He's like, dude, the guy's hilarious. Everything you said, he had something to come back with. This is exactly what we need. And so they hired him, and they brought him in as a third. And Superbad was one of the funniest movies of the last 20 years. And it just hit me for some reason. I've seen things like that, but like you said, remember, Laura, turn the lights on. All of a sudden, the lights got turned on for me, and I just said, I'm coming to a point in my life. This next season, I am dedicating to being unapologetically myself. I am dedicating this next season of my life of doing what I want to do because I want to do it, regardless of what other people think of me, regardless of what other people may assume of me. And it's just, I'm really ready to step into that lion. Like, I'm really tired of being meek, and I'm really ready to step into that lion. So authenticity, which I'm a very authentic person, but am I being completely authentic with myself if I'm scared to speak my truth to certain people because of how they may receive it without me actually knowing how they would? And so for me, authenticity moving forward is key, because we've been in these illusions. We've been playing in these illusions for so long, hundreds of years. We've been cultivated in illusion. We've been programmed with illusion, taught, governed. Like, everything's been illusion. The
Thousands.
Thousands, exactly, thousands of years. And the only way for me to thwart that illusion is to be authentically myself, to speak that authentic truth, because that authenticity is felt and it resonates with people's souls. It resonates with people's hearts. And they know I'm speaking the truth when I'm speaking it, because I don't beat around the bush and I don't mince words anymore. I used to walk on eggshells around everyone's egos and wanted to say the perfect thing and wanted to make sure everyone felt good. And then that's why that 100 vlog challenge I did was, my name's Ace and I'm here to give it to you straight, because I was tired of not giving it to people straight. And since then, I've slowly backed off of being so direct where it could be hurtful. And I've learned tact, and I've learned saying the right things at the correct times, maybe waiting till so it's a game. It really is. It's an earth game. And I'm learning how to speak and communicate with authenticity, so that, again, like Laura was talking about, I'm not compromising myself, and then I'm not draining my cup. And then I'm, like Em was talking about, source feeds me the energy with which then I could feed others. I don't feed them from me. And so I have to make sure that I'm taken care of. And that's why authenticity was really powerful for me. What about anybody else? What is authenticity to them, and how has it helped y'all in these last 3 years step into who you've become, these beautiful, amazing humans in my life that I look up to, and I truly am so grateful that I get to spend time with y'all.
For me, it wasn't really speaking my truth so much as just being myself in my interests. So I would chameleon, right, to different people and their likes if I didn't really like that, but I pretended to like it to be their friend, when in reality, I'm going to find my tribe by being my authentic self. And here we are. So that's me and my authenticity.
Which I love.
Laura.
I mean, I really resonate with that, because it's like the other day, I'm I'm integrating back into my life with a group of people that I was with like a year ago, but I'm very different now. And so when you're in these situations, you have the opportunity to do that. It's very fascinating. I recognized I'm not going to be here to go along to get along anymore. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to do that. It's a beautiful dance. I think we would all love to think that we reach this moment of pure authenticity. The lights turn on, we get it, we love ourselves completely, and it's always going to be that way.
Until tomorrow.
And I really love being in the moment. And what I love is the opportunity to be in the moment and authentically say, I don't know.
I like that.
I don't know right now.
People could have a fear of that. People have a fear of saying they don't know, of not saying I don't know. Like, that's a threat. That's a threat.
Because I've been asked quite a bit, you guys, in the past week, what do you want, Laura? And I can go, I don't know. I'm just showing up.
Yeah, I like that.
I love that, because that means you're open to new opportunities no matter what comes ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Does anybody have anything to add to authenticity, or should we move to the next one?
Jackie? Or
I pulled a card.
Yeah, I'm down for cards.
This one was flying free, and it had me like very curious as to what it meant. It means to be daring, cast aside conventions and restrictions, dance, laugh, explore, go beyond your predictable behaviors, and say yes to life.
It's pretty authentic to me.
Very aligned with authenticity.
Absolutely.
I know Nicole probably wanted to say something. I wanted to share, I think, is it Trina or Trina? Said something about being a people pleaser. I saw a quick pop up there. I mean, I was a people pleaser. I hid. I mean, I thought my parents would disown me if they really knew who I was. So I think I knew who I was before I really knew who I was. And when I woke up, I'm like, oh, that's really who I am. And I just can't go back. I can't not be the person maybe they want, or maybe they didn't want that person. So, you know, slowly, you know, I get people when they try to ask me questions like, why do you do this? And why is it this? Will you ever go back? So I just say, no, I can't. This is who I am. So I love you and I hope you love me.
I love that.
That's it.
Nicole.
Yeah, just literally piggybacking off of what everyone's saying. Just the more you realize your passions and your hobbies and your self-love for yourself, that your confidence just radiates outward, that being authentic becomes just, it's just you. I mean, you then don't feel that resistance of that old you, of the things that are trapping all your triggers and your traumas, that we've now moved past this. And once you've kind of stepped over that threshold of confidence and self-love and just being authentic, I mean, that feeling that radiates within your heart right there is you won at that point, in my opinion. So being authentic is the baseline of where the goal is to be, you know, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It's totally stepping into your power and being in that narrow pathway of light. And
Yeah.
then, because when you're being fake, or when you're being something that is really not who you really are, it feels darker. It feels like it gets bumpy. Life gets bumpier because
No,
you're on
totally.
the road instead of in the lane, right? You're like in the weeds. You're getting stuck in the weeds, or you're on the bumpy side of the road, and you know things are just, you know, you're getting flat tires and all kinds of things happen. So it's just better to stay in the narrow pathway and be authentic to who you are. And if the right people that are your tribe, that can celebrate who you are, and you can celebrate who they are, you'll find each other.
Quickly too. It's very quickly, actually. Very, very quickly. So Nicole, that you finished with authenticity, but I do know vulnerability is an aspect of authenticity. How do you, what is your opinion of vulnerability from more of a conceptual lens, and how does that play into your authentic nature?
Yeah, so being vulnerable, I mean, and this is actually something I've learned recently. We have all these emotions, all these names, and they are so closely related, but at the same time, it's a whole different frequency that can be transcended. So knowing that these are so closely related, authenticity and vulnerability, you do need both, you know, to continue raising that emotion to unlock more DNA and all that great stuff. So with being vulnerable, while you're being authentic to yourself, being vulnerable, you can't like sell yourself short, or kind of get after yourself for like things that you are riding a roller coaster of life, and there's times when you're down, but you need to be vulnerable with yourself and how you are going about our daily experiences. As we know, it's constantly an energy roller coaster, and even more so now, I feel like we're having like 5 days in a day of energy. And so making sure you're vulnerable, making sure that you're coming from the heart, and that if something comes your way that makes you feel those lower vibration emotions, that's okay, that this is your time for growth, and just being vulnerable and authentic, and knowing this is part of that ascension process that is naturally happening. And that will also unlock more of your heart and get out of the thinking brain where you're stressed, you're anxious, you're stuck to all that sticky stuff that's distractions. When you're vulnerable, you're in your heart space, you can feel through when things don't feel right, you can work through that or step away from that. So being vulnerable, I feel like being authentic and vulnerable is really being in your heart space and being one with yourself and loving yourself. You can't go wrong with that. You'll trigger other people just by your energy of being vulnerable and authentic. Like, say something comes at me that should trigger me, but I'm able to come to it with grace and ease and understand that there is a larger understanding from this. You know, be vulnerable, be authentic, don't hold yourself just so tight, you know, zoom out from all these distractions and realize
Dang.
Her energy gets too high.
Her energy gets too high. She starts vibing too high. There she is.
it always happens right there. So the last thing I was just going to say is zoom out from all the distractions and feel with your heart, because when we're zoomed out and we're in this expanded view, everything is oneness and everything is from another, you know, it's an accentuation of something else. But when you're distracted with all these little things, of course, you're going to react and feel these types of lower emotions. So again, being vulnerable, coming from the heart, and being, you know, your authentic self.
Thanks, Nicole. What do you got?
So vulnerability. So it's taking off your mask, your ego, and showing people that you aren't perfect, that you're a human being, you're learning too. And just expressing yourself in that manner makes you vulnerable, I feel.
100%. Cool. Danielle, what do you got? You're muted. Oh no.
Sorry about that. I'm able to connect very deeply with people that are vulnerable. It again goes to the heart, and I just feel like that you put the walls come down, and then you can really embrace each other and really get somewhere, you know. So being vulnerable, I feel like it just puts up the facade, the mask, like you said, and then let's get to really know one another. Let's really be there to hold space for that person, because we've all probably been in that position, and or maybe we needed that guidance for what we are going through in our life. So I think vulnerability is a beautiful place to be, and not worry about what others think about you, because we've all been there. Everybody's had their story.
Jackie, what do you got?
I pulled another card.
What do you got?
Priorities. It's the building, vulnerability is a building block for life. It literally helps us when we're vulnerable. It helps us recognize stuck energy in every one of our energy centers so that we can live in alignment with how we want to live our life, how we want to feel when we're in our life, when we're living our life. We cannot live our life in an aligned way if we are not vulnerable.
I agree.
Because if we're not vulnerable, then we're not being honest with how we're feeling. We're not being honest with the actions we're taking. We're not being honest with the thoughts that we're having about ourselves and about other people or about our life in general.
Without vulnerability, we can't be authentic, basically.
We can't.
So Laura, what do you got for vulnerability?
I mean, the only thing that's coming through for me right now are the beautiful women I've been with. And the hardest part about giving birth is that final vulnerability where and it's it's so practical, you guys, but sometimes I'll look at them when they say, I can't do it. And I look at them and I go, say the crazy thing in your head right now. And I've heard some crazy things. And saying the crazy thing allows them to be the most vulnerable you can be, which is completely opening up your root and pushing a baby out. Because everyone, regardless of who you are and how you've gotten to that, gets stuck there for the most part. There's always, especially with your first one, there's always this moment. And you just look at them and you say the crazy thing. And I feel like sometimes in my life when I'm interacting with people, because of that experience I have, I want to look at them and go, say the crazy thing. I want someone to say it to me, say the crazy thing. And I'm like, yes, let's do it.
You just reminded me of my first child. I had a natural birth, but in a hospital, and I did not have the support I needed. And I literally had the Van Damme scream, like, yeah. It was so loud. And like I was upside down. I'm like, I can't push this child upside down. Please put me down. Oh man, but it's so funny that you said that crazy thing. I so wanted a doula and a midwife or all of the above. And so thank you for your support, because it is like taking you to the most, I don't know,
Vulnerable.
I literally, like, it's like I never knew, like I was tremoring. I'm like, my body's shaking, but I didn't feel like I was cold. I was like, and Brian's like, you're going through the biggest experience, full body experience of your life right now.
Mhm.
And so I really appreciate you being there for so many mamas, because it does change you. It changes you in a whole nother way. And it's a beautiful experience. I'm so glad that I got to actually feel what it's like. But, you know, I had trauma from not getting the support, and I had to let that go too. So talk about vulnerability. You know, I really realized that in a breathwork workshop that I had to release that trauma. I actually went through a physical birth in the breathwork,
Yeah.
and released it there. So thank you.
It's interesting. I just have one tiny little thing. From a mindset perspective, a lot of times when people are really like they're coming up against a wall, when they say the crazy thing that's in their head that they didn't realize was actually there, it actually takes down that wall and releases all of that tension that they had built up behind that wall. And it's beautiful because it's healing at that moment, because healing energy can come in when you finally say what your brain has been trying not to let out. It becomes beautiful.
Thank you for that. I've heard that the resistance of the woman is what causes the length of the labor. But like you said, it's your first one. You've never been through a near-death experience like giving birth, because it's kind of what it is. Your entire body's changing in an instant. So that's just beautiful to hear from all the mamas in the crowd and hear your perspectives on that, and bringing these concepts into real life situations and experiences that a lot of us can relate to. I mean, I'm a dude and I never had kids, but I've talked to plenty of women who have had them, and I'm very empathetic and I can understand what y'all have been through. Plus, I believe I was a woman many a times in other lives, so I'm sure
You
there's
didn't feel the
some.
contractions?
Oh, no, I'm really hoping I don't have to do that.
Oh, you've
But-
given birth in another life.
Oh, I know I have. That's why when she told me that I was coming back into this, I was like, all right, I'm being the dude, and I'm not being a woman in this life. I don't, no, thank you. But anyway, I respect you all so much, so much. Thanks so much. But the next topic I wanted to segue into, starting with Laura, is innocence, because she brought up pregnancy, she brought up giving birth. We talk about children, we talk about childlike innocence. To me, what I was going to say about vulnerability was, it's been one of the greatest tools I've used to create common ground. Like Nicole was talking about yesterday when we came up with this topic, was finding common ground by being vulnerable first with those around you will open the door for them to be vulnerable with you. And then that's when spirit comes in and there's no more ego. And I've noticed that I could have been 30 beers deep in the middle of this dive bar in San Diego, and I'm having spiritual conversations with people because I'm vulnerable. And I don't want to condone alcohol abuse and things like that, but that was my life. My life was spent in a bar till I was 28. And so when I wasn't working or hustling, I was in a bar. But when I was in a bar, I was having these beautiful spiritual experiences that I downplayed because I didn't realize that I thought the only way I could find spirit was in these spaces.
Was in spirits.
Was in spirits. And so it was a driving force to my addiction, right? For a while wasn't so much the alcohol, but it was the experience, it was the conversation, it was the authenticity, it was the vulnerability that you are when you're around drunks. And being a Marine, the only time that we could express ourselves and our true feelings and emotions was when we were 18 sheets to the wind. And so, Laura, speaking on innocence, how can we leverage innocence, vulnerability, authenticity at this time, during these current events, during these crazy transitions in humanity and civilization? How is going back to our innocence so important for maintaining balance, neutrality throughout these changing times?
I think for me, it's a little bit of like being childlike. I think when you're a child, you, specifically before the age of 7, I think that you have a very big understanding of and complete connection with divine love. But if I was going to define innocence and say this is what innocence is, I think that innocence is a lack of fear of judgment.
Perfect. That's what I was looking for.
I know that's not said very well, but it's like I think about my daughter before she went to school and how I encouraged her so much to just do whatever. You know, Diana, triple fire sign that she is, would choose to be naked all the time, run around singing at the top of her lungs, dancing to her heart's content. And that is what she was like before she went to school. And then she has started going to school, and it has been a journey to help her recapture herself and her just not being inhibited about it anymore. And that has been painful as a mother, when as a mom you wanted to encourage that, but I also understand it's part of aging too. But also, dang it, sing at the top of your lungs, it's great. So you know, she did not fear judgment for a very long time, and I saw when that clicked over very viscerally.
The other side of awareness. What about you, Heather? How have you reclaimed your innocence after so many years of feeling like you lost it?
For me, it was getting into my creative spirit, my wood burns,
Tarot,
tarot, painting.
painting. Yeah, I didn't know I like
Um,
paint, but I went to her creative house and I really like painting.
And it had really helped me to let go of my perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
The most beautiful artwork is done by people who just let it go and let it flow. And that's what innocence is just being yourself, being in general,
Being.
you know, and not caring about this or that, or if this is perfect or if that's not, or, you know, just being free.
Like something interesting, we're staying at my buddy's place, and they have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and when they're trying something new, it's amazing to watch them just like mess up and then go run after the ball, and then mess up and go run after the ball, and it doesn't affect them that they're not getting it. They're just going to keep doing it until they do, or they don't, and they don't care, and they just go off and do something else. And it's like, for me, I remember being a kid and like walking a batter on the mound at 8 or 9 years old and having a freaking PTSD meltdown and walking the entire side until I'm walking runners in, and my dad's having to pull me out of the game because I was just so anxious about not being perfect. So it's like, how do we cultivate that innocence in ourselves? So we're cultivating that innocence in the younger generation, so that we're not repeating what we've had to deal with, what our parents had to deal with. Like, and Heather was talking about, with this perfectionism, like Laura was talking about, with this conformity of being something that fits the societal mold, but actually doesn't fit who we are. Jackie, what do you got?
Well, when you guys were talking, it's like at first I was like focused in on the childlike innocence, the curiosity, and that's part of it. But then it led me down to what I call the place of no thing, where it is really in a place where I set aside my own expectations of what something needs to look like, or be like, or what I expect the answers to be. Right? So in any time where I go to spirit and I'm inquiring about something, it's very easy for me to go, okay, well, I've thought of this and this is what I think the answer should be, but I'm just going to check in, right? Well, I never get the answer that, and then I'm restricted. I'm a narrow-minded. So for me, with the innocence, I need to come to that place in a very innocence type energy, where I leave aside my own expectations of what the answers should be according to my own analysis, and the expectations of what they could be, and just allow myself to explore in different possibilities that spirit is willing to show me. And when that happens, it actually gets to the root of the issue way faster than if I had come there with the expectations and the baggage.
Let it go and let it flow.
Yeah. So it's literally coming from a place, because it's like a little kid that's always asking why.
I have
Right?
that job.
That was me.
Why is the sky blue? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? That's how we figure out the mysteries of life. That's how we figure out the mysteries of the universe, when they're not really mysteries. We just have been so close-minded to hear and see what it really is. If we just come from a place of innocence, which has been my whole spiritual journey completely, because I let all of the stuff that I had learned as a child, all the dogma, I let it lay at the door, and just came at this like, this is the next step I was shown. Okay, let's go. Are you sure I can do that? Yeah, okay, let's go.
Blind faith.
Right? And it literally has taken me down places I never thought that I would go down.
So your innocence, in other words, your innocence, when you invested your time and energy into rekindling that innocence and better understanding it, it actually expanded you. It expanded your life, it expanded your spirit, expanded your experiences. And so it's basically to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to have innocence again is a way to expand ourselves while the things around us seem like they're falling apart. Danielle or Nicole, go ahead real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, it literally brings you to a point where the world is your oyster.
Perfect. Perfect. Danielle, you got anything on innocence?
I do, but I think it's very, very combined with a lot of things that everyone said. I think I've become more open, and the more open I am, more guided by intuition and just trust and faith, and it feels right. Where I used to never follow any intuition. I thought feelings were a bad thing. Like, you can't show emotion. Like, your emotions, you're too emotional. So as soon as I allowed those feelings to come through, or just opening up possibility, and it just trusting, and then you'll know when something feels wrong, like, when that, okay, I'm kind of taking a chance here. but usually I played with that too. Like, and then my intuition was always right. Like, you have to have discernment, but there's this innocence of following this path and being open.
So innocence takes discernment though, because if
Yeah.
if we're just open-hearted like we
Yeah.
were when we were kids to everything, then we may get taken advantage of like we did back then
Yeah.
when we weren't strong
Yeah.
enough, fast enough, smart enough to stand up for ourselves. And that's why our ego developed in the first place. And so you're saying that through your innocence, you're able to gain the confidence to be yourself. I love that. Nicole, what do you got?
Yeah, so along kind of with everyone saying, I think it was actually, Jackie said this yesterday. I'm sorry if it was someone else, but how you remember back to when, maybe it was Heather. I'm sorry. Anyway, remember back to when you're a child in school and it's the first day of summer. Yeah, and so that first day of summer feeling of what are you going to do? There's endless possibilities and you have no attachments and nothing holding you back. So what could you possibly do with all possibilities? Just that feeling of that first day of summer, and try to like hold that with you. And that in itself, just even thinking of that. So whoever said that, thank you. That's really helped me. Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, because it really gives a great example of coming out of the monkey mind, and just the anxiousness, the stress, the distractions, the ego, the everything. And instead we're feeling, and we're just like, what should we do? What do I want to do? And coming from the heart, it's the best feeling. And coming from that space, you are able to be creative. You're able to be passionate, and these things that you didn't have time for, I guess, because the distractions took away from that time for you to be vulnerable, authentic, innocent. So, creating space to let yourself flow is, I think, very important for that to happen.
And I think, part of innocence is forgiveness, and this is what Danielle and Heather had brought up in our meeting yesterday when we were going over the ceremony, was forgiveness is an important part, especially of this time. It's forgiving ourselves, forgiving each other. So Heather, what did you feel when talking about forgiveness, and what did you how did you see it playing out in the grand scheme of neutrality, striking consistency through spirit, and being unapologetically ourselves?
Well, if you're not forgiving others, but you also got to forgive yourself. So forgiveness is for you, not for them. For my healing, if I didn't forgive those who trespassed against me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it's part of unconditional love as well, is forgiving those.
And how were you able to first forgive yourself so that it became easier for others to forgive themselves?
I
Or for you to forgive
always,
them?
I always could forgive others so easily, but I could never forgive myself. And I had like a card reading or something that said, treat yourself as your best friend. So I was able to then, what would I tell my best friend in this situation? That I did something to trespass against someone else. What would I tell them? You know, and I brought that to myself.
I love that.
And that's how I was able to start doing that.
Danielle, what do you got for that?
So forgiveness for me was in different capacities. I've seen where holding on to something, was harder than forgiving. It's like the attachment was really the challenge, that kept just brewing more and more and more resentment or whatever it was, when I felt like I was trying to get over something, and then I realized, oh, I'm holding on to this. So forgiving people in that way, and or taking other people's stories and getting angry, and then wait a minute, like, I need that person served a great role in my life. They're a great character. And because they did this, I have to forgive that. So there were parts of me that grew from realizing different characters. Maybe I didn't like what they did, but forgiving them and how it maybe affected my life. And then realizing, ultimately forgiving myself for holding on to all this, holding on to my own story that no longer serviced me. So forgiveness, I think, is something that's important often, especially in a lot of trauma that we've all had. That's the way forward, is forgiveness.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Laura, how do you invoke forgiveness in your life during transitory times, during times of craziness? Like, how do you invoke forgiveness for yourself? How do you invoke forgiveness of others? And how would you explain that to someone who may not have the understanding of these concepts as deeply as we do? How would you best simplify forgiveness so that they could see that it's a powerful tool that can be used in their life?
It's so interesting because what I thought when you said this was, I was like, oh, well, you got to go through the stages. So I'm one of those people who I really think that sometimes, oh, you could really piss off a person by saying you need to operate in forgiveness, like there's a way to trigger someone. I think you need to forgive yourself or forgive others. Like, so sometimes for myself, even, I give myself the grace to be in what I consider stages. And this is just the metaphysics I've built up around forgiveness. So to forego, to leave it alone, to forbear, to abstain from punishing, to forget, so to refuse to think about it. And then finally to forgive. And the way I think about forgiveness nowadays is this idea of to abandon the debt.
Rip the
It's sunk
contract.
cost.
Rip up the contract.
Rip
Yeah.
up the contract. I like that.
So, but I don't expect myself to go from one to another. And those stages of forgiveness build in the fact that you're going to spend time thinking about it a crap ton.
Yeah.
And you're going to spend time thinking about how you want to punish yourself or people. And you know what? It could be a split second. It's okay. Like I would prefer it to be a split second, or I could spend a couple days being pretty obsessed with punishment. But I feel like once I accepted that there were stages to forgiveness, it got actually a lot easier for me to get to abandoning the debt.
So
Yeah.
grace, giving yourself grace to work through the process of forgiveness and not just expect yourself to be able to do it. Again, what Jackie was talking about. I have this expectation that I'm going to forgive this person, but just saying the words isn't feeling it. And it takes feeling it for it to come to fruition. And so it's about working with it, sitting with it, being with it for a bit until you can find the golden thread through it all. So Nicole, then Jackie. Nicole, forgiveness for you. You've had a life. You've had a whole journey through your own religion, with your family, and yet here you are, this beautiful beacon of light. You open your open arms to them at all times, even if they don't completely receive and respect you. How have you used forgiveness to move past all of the potentially energy draining aspects of your path so that you can be who you are today?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, forgiveness for me, especially coming out of religion and allowing those contracts to be ripped up, essentially. Forgiveness was something personally that I felt like, it's not something you have to necessarily say face to face to somebody like, I forgive you, but you personally, internally saying it and going through the energy release is just as powerful and does the exact same thing. So for me, in my situation, I didn't feel like I could go to everybody in my family and forgive them face to face for the trauma that I had taken on, because of course they don't see it that way in the first place. And so for me to let that go and to see the little things that I did learn from those things that triggered me or never resonated with me, it made me think of, why doesn't this resonate with me? And it made me turn on my awareness, I guess, or activate that. So forgiving them, and it's honestly a thank you, and forgiving as one, as it comes in, you're attracted to that energy for one reason or another, one lesson or another. And so being thankful for it coming into your path, whether it seems negative, and that sounds crazy at first, of course, but you may need to do the forgiving, and then you'll see why it was something that you should be thankful for. At least in my case, I see the little things that really made me see an expanded awareness of how religion's created and what its and purpose is, and how it's designed to keep us from really expanding our awareness to this oneness that we are all gods, and we're all creators and all these things. So of course I can't tell them my thoughts to what I don't agree with, but I can thank them for and forgive them both for bringing this into my awareness. And it's not for me, thank you, I'm leaving it alone, and now I have what I need to move forward.
And Jackie, I would like for you to hit on forgiveness, and then move and then segue into balance, and then start talking about how balancing authenticity, vulnerability, forgiveness, innocence is how we create synergy during these times to lead New Earth into a place that's not what it always has been for the last how many thousands of years.
Yeah, absolutely. So forgiveness for me is something that's been very key from an energetic healing standpoint. It guaranteed almost every energetic healing I do for other people, there is a forgiveness segment that they are being asked to do to finish off the healing, because energetically, when we don't allow ourselves to forgive, either ourselves for holding on to that energy, or forgive other people for being part of that unhealed energy being created to begin with, we're stuck in the same patterns. And when we allow ourselves to forgive, we enter out of that, like we allow ourselves to exit the karmic loop, which means that that unhealed energy isn't, that even though it's been released through a healing, it won't come back through a pattern of being tethered to it. So one of the healing or forgiveness methods is actually envisioning an energetic cord between you and the other person who is involved in the situation and your old self, and then sending love and forgiveness to each, your old self and the other person or the people, and then cutting that energetic cord so that, and releasing the energy for healing. And it's
real quick, Jackie, real quick. Yeah. M was saying how until I realized I needed to forgive myself for whatever I had done or was part of, that was when I could authentically forgive someone else. So you're saying that we have to feel it inside. We have to it has to be honest, and it has to be authentic feeling that, yes, I forgive this person and thank you. Like, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's honestly sending love and forgiveness to yourself and sending love and forgiveness to the other person, because when we are in a situation where we have unhealed energy, that is baggage that we are carrying and it's weighing us down through every step of our journey. And we can forgive other people for the stuff that they've done. And I agree, Nicole, like when we feel the need to, when I have clients who have said, well, I feel like I need to like say I forgive you to that other person face to face. And I'm like, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. But what are you expecting to get from that situation? Because what happens if that person is not ready to accept that statement from you? What if that person gets triggered by the fact that you've now, because they thought they did nothing wrong? It's now you're placing expectations on how they need to react in order for you to heal. And if that's not going to happen, then it's going to prevent you from doing the healing. But if we do it in the privacy of our own home, in our own space, in a very comfortable, loving space for ourselves, then it's healing. And what I've seen energetically is when we allow ourselves to untether from that energy, from that trauma, it actually frees the other person as well. And it allows them to actually have some freedom to be able to forgive themselves or forgive other people that they have maybe what happened is they've had trauma that was unhealed from another situation, and they reacted to you because they had that unhealed trauma, right? It was a chain reaction. So when you allow yourselves to forgive the other person, then they actually have the freedom to choose a different way of reacting in their own life.
I agree.
Because everything is tied. Energetically, we are so interconnected. It's unhealthy.
So how do we balance all of this? How do we balance forgiveness if it's there? Like for me, I would apologize for everything back in the day. So that was on the extreme. You know, there was no neutrality in my forgiveness. It was, I owned every problem was my problem. Everything that went wrong, it was my fault.
Oh,
Like,
that's over responsibility. That's another shadow.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying, it's like, how do we strike a balance between all these concepts that we were talking about? Because you said that a lot of times during these really energetically hectic times, we get lost because we forget the basics. And these concepts are to me, these are basic, foundational, not basic, I would say nothing's really basic if you dig into the reads, but they're very foundational concepts that can really be leveraged to help our souls expand. And so how do you strike a balance between speaking your truth, but not doing it so much that you're getting punched in the face? You know, like, I mean, that's easy. That's an easy analogy to work with because just don't say it. Well, obviously, but there are some people that don't realize that what they're saying is going to piss someone off.
That don't have a filter.
Fact.
Or they're not tuned in to their spirit enough to hear that or feel those nudges like, yeah, now's not the right time, honey. You should not say that.
You should keep your pants on. You're in a pizzeria. Let's go. All right.
Yeah. So the balance is knowing when you're in shadow, like being very tuned into the sidelines. When you're in the sidelines versus when you're in the narrow pathway is what I like to say. So the balance is, okay, so when we are off balance, in moments like this, when we are off balance, it's low vibrational stuff, right? It's anger, frustration. It is trying to do the perfect thing and then something happens that we didn't expect, or it is being too busy and not taking the time for ourselves to center ourselves, or doing things that align with everyone else's priorities instead of our own priorities. of how we want our life to feel like or be like. It is, when we are off balance, those are the times where we need to look at different areas of our life, our career, relationships, our health, our wealth, meaning our quality of life, our own personal development, and our own spiritual journey. And we need to figure out where the off balance stuff is. So if we are doing things for everyone else's priorities and not focusing in what's priority for us, then what can we do in those moments to bring more balance? Do we say no to an event instead of saying yes? Do we, you know, if we're too busy, okay, here's an example. When we are on our spiritual journey, we can spend hours in a day in meditation, but we're not getting work done. We're not going out and earning a living. We can't afford groceries then, right? We're probably not bathing or brushing our teeth or spending time with our kids if we're spending 15 hours a day in meditation trying to, like, you know, sort things out. So then we're losing touch of our reality. It is spending hours on consuming social media and media stuff instead of playing a game with our kids. It's finding balance. You know, we can be consumed with the social media and the media to try and stay in touch with what's happening in the chaotic world, but then we're losing touch with things that matter to us because we're not spending time with our kids. We're too busy on our phones instead of having a conversation with people that matter to us. You guys are muted.
It's 1, 2, 3. It's raining cats and dogs over here real quick with triggers.
Alex,
No,
breathe.
oh yeah, it was funny because, like I said, this whole day has been, the whole last couple of days, last life has been
Since
triggering.
Friday.
So it's just like, I recognize that now. Like I see the universe working just to do stuff. Like Heather handed me two cords because she just grabbed them real quick. I didn't take the time to see which one I was plugging in. So I plugged in the wrong one. I could have easily got upset with her in an illusion, but immediately I was like, it's happening to trigger me. And that's why I was like, when I came on, but I wasn't going to let it happen. And so I'm finding balance in my own self. Like, I think Jackie's explanation of balance was perfect. And I would like to end this conversation of these concepts and move into the prayer with each of our ways of staying balanced ourselves in our lives when we find ourselves off kilting. Laura was talking about how she's just now starting to practice saying no to things when she was the yes woman for a really long time. Me, how I stay balanced is recognizing when my ego, when I start I start just judging everything around me, and I recognize that I'm off balance with not spending enough time with myself. So my ego starts to project and talk crap about everything outside of me, because in reality, all my human needs is time with me to help balance me out, so that I can find that common ground within myself again. So Laura, you talked about that one thing you're practicing. Is there another thing that you invoke to find balance in your life?
I think as a really spiritual person, and then someone who's also, you know, I spent a hefty portion of my life intellectually understanding religion and religious movements. I feel like the challenge for us now is to practice all of this in the marketplace. And the temptation is to become hermits, to turn off our phones all the time, to abstain. And I do not think that that is what is being asked of us as spiritual people right now. I fairly strongly, I feel that like this is about being in the moment, in the hardest moments to be in the moment.
I love that challenge. Like for me, I could have let this ruin this whole entire conversation now, that in the past I would have a year ago. There's a reason that this whole New Earth Leaders thing didn't happen a year ago. I wasn't ready. I was still getting triggered. I was still distracting. I was still coping. So like, letting things just happen now. I mean, I've had my moment of being frustrated. Yeah, it's just energy. Like a duck flapping its wings after a little lake battle with another duck, right? But I don't let it take me down all the way anymore. I don't let it just dictate what it is that I'm going through. So that's beautiful. What do you got, Heather?
Balance. My biggest thing that I need to balance is service to others and service to self. So I am a Cancer moon, and I just love taking care of my family. Cooking for them, waiting on them
Doting.
hand and waiting on hand and foot. And all that stuff. But I need to do that for myself. But I also need to find rest and allow him to do those things for the family as well. So that's where my balance is coming, is
Thank you
what
so
I'm
much,
working
brother.
on right now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
What do you got, Danielle?
I think it's very much just through the shift, my life changed pretty dramatically. I had to pivot pretty quickly from, working pretty full time with my spouse, running a gym and kids in school, to homeschooling, to having more freedom, to starting my new practice in quantum healing hypnosis, and not giving myself enough time to really do all these things that I want to do right now. So I'm just kind of trying to be in the now moment, just like Laura said, like, okay, here I am today. This is what I can be today. And I have a lot of wonderful humans in my life that encourage me to take step forwards as well, like Heather, and starting a logo for myself. So I put myself on the back burner a lot. Like I'm not, the worthiness is still there. So that balance of, okay, I still am the priority in my life, even though I like to take care of my kids too. I'm very much like a provider in my family, for their needs, the cat's needs, everything. So it's definitely, that's probably my hardest one of all the components that we
What,
learned,
the
is the
cats?
balance. My cats.
The
Yeah, I
hardest
love
part of the
them.
cats.
My cat was just there. I had to give her a little bit of love.
And Nicole, I would love to hear your perspective from someone who's still working full-time in the matrix and pursuing a spiritual path outside of that. How do you strike balance between doing your matrix job, holding your vibe high, and then still coming home and jumping on as Spirit Nicole? And what is this going to be, like a 20-hour day for you or something crazy like that? So
I don't know, but yeah. Okay,
I don't know what
so
time it is anymore. Date.
exactly. Yeah, so that has been something that I have had to learn, and I feel like I've been able to somewhat, I don't want to say master it, but I've been getting better at mastering it over the last few years, because being in the hospital is one of the lowest vibrational places you can be, and it really sucks my energy if I don't remember balance. And that is something, it like reminds me, because I'm angry, I'm getting like the littlest things, like Ace was saying, like a wrong chord switch up, like even in my job, those little things like would get to me. And that would be my reminder to be like, you're not balancing, And so I have gotten into the habit of, I have found a little space, a little room in the hospital that isn't very used very often. So I often go to that space. We'll turn on some type of meditation music or just go into a meditation. I have to balance that. Otherwise, I can just feel the energy. It's just different. So being able to find a space throughout the day, after lunch, making sure I step outside just to get out for a little bit, just a new scenery, a new perspective, that has been very, very helpful and grounding for me. And then, yeah, coming home, and this has also been somewhat hard for me, is the balance when I get home and to still have alone time, because I've been with people all day, I'm with, then come home to the family and everything. And I love that, which is great, but I also have not had a time to just exhale and breathe. So remembering to take time to be alone, whatever that may be. It doesn't have to be meditative state. It can just be relaxing, sitting, admiring, but reminding myself to do that throughout the day I'm reminded, I guess, to do that throughout the day because of how quick the energy can shift. Or if I have a really sad interaction with a patient, I just take that on and want to do everything that I can to share love and light. And so after those situations, I tell myself, hey, you got to reground, recap.
Oh no.
He was doing so well.
She was doing so well. She'll come back. There she is. Hi.
Yeah, so just lastly, if I have a low vibrational interaction with a patient, just to remember that that is a indicator to ground and rejuvenate, because there's always going to be things throughout the day that will bring you down and you'll come back up, and you just have to do the dance. You got to feel your energy.
Yep,
Yeah.
gotta
You
do the
become
dance.
Even
one
if
with
you
that.
just step out and put the, like, let the sun shine on your face, that's
Yeah.
really enough to, like, just feeling that heat from the sun is enough to focus in on your energies from where they were to where they need to be.
Thank you so much for all of your insights and your
Sure.
wisdom. Thank you for everybody who joined us in the crowd. Thank you, Em. Thank you, Trina, for sticking around all the way to the end. Thank you for all your all the insights you gave us on the chat, and thank you for your patience as we work through a little bit longer than I had expected, but it tends to happen that way. So we're just so grateful.
It goes every time. Maisie.
Every time,
Right.
every time. But I don't want to set 2 hours because it will go longer than 2 hours.
I
I
know.
promise you that.
Yes.
So I set an hour, and if it goes longer than that, I'm like, yeah, we're still within 2 hours. We're good.
Is there anyone in the
Yeah.
audience who wants a question answered?
Yeah, Trina or Em, do you want anything answered from the cards before we take it to the prayer and then we take us off?
I can't really think of anything right now. This has been just a wonderful kind of session. I know there's been a lot going on in our lives here, but I'm finding that as I'm learning to rest and just be diligent and seek more from the divine, that but yeah, I have changed so much over the last, especially the 2-3 years, more so. And like I mentioned in the chat, my husband still doesn't doesn't exactly accept who I am, and some of the other family members, but hey, it's their issue, not mine.
Yep. And maybe it's your path to learn how to be your authentic self, why those closest to you that you love the most don't accept you for you.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I was always for everybody else. I wasn't for me. And when I learned to love myself and not judge myself, and I learned to be me and getting to know who I am, and I love myself for the first time in a lot of years.
Perfect. That's so beautiful. Thank
Yes.
you. Because what's so amazing about that is when we begin to change who we are into who we really are, who we're really becoming, right? It doesn't fit the construct that people have in their ego minds of who we are. And when we don't match their expectations, like Jackie was talking about, when we don't match their expectations anymore, we cause rifts in their energy field. You know, like then all of a sudden they don't know us anymore, and they don't know it. It's just when you're not guided by spirit, when you're not heart-centered, it's so easy to be thrown off your game, and it's so easy to be frazzled, and so easy to be frustrated. And so thank you so much for sharing your true experience, and thank you so much for being vulnerable with us and authentic and
Yeah.
embodying all of these amazing concepts that we covered tonight. And if anybody if any of the hosts want to add before we take it to the prayer and then take us off, I'd be grateful to hear your final words.
I got a card.
Okay.
Caring community. And it is a high vibrational card that reminds us to participate and belong and enrich our life by being part of a community of soul-minded, heart-centered, heart-aligned beings. This card literally talks about the Atlantis communities that were created to celebrate everyone's unique path and unique talents and gifts, and use each other to combine things in a way that is uplifting for all.
I love that. And I feel like that's actually a really great idea for another roundtable discussion, is those specific sequence of thought process at the end there. So we're going to definitely look into that, to have a roundtable. I would love to have more of these. This was incredible. I love our ceremonies. I love the guided meditations. I want to keep continuing to do those. Nicole's mass, what's your channel again, Nicole, that you hold monthly?
Awakening mass
Awakening
meditation.
Mass Meditations on Telegram, right?
Yep, and we have one tomorrow being the 11th of the month. So on Telegram, Awakening Mass Meditations group. There's a countdown right now, but tomorrow, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a mass meditation guided.
And I love those mass meditations, but these roundtable discussions are so powerful. And where we would like to do going into the future is move into like specific topics. Like for me, I've been wanting to have one on parenting. Like what's higher consciousness parenting, or we call it 5D parenting. What does that look like? Especially because we have so many mamas in the crowd right now. You know, like what does 5D education looks like? Like these roundtable discussions, I feel, are going to fuel our manifestations when trying to build whatever new earth is in our minds together individually as one. Paradox, of course, right? Does anybody else have anything to add to anything of this conversation?
I pulled some cards.
I just got some cards before our prayer.
I asked what energies to expect for the next month.
First one.
One of my least favorite cards came up.
I like the Fool. I don't
No,
know.
that one's not the one that I dislike the most.
The Fool is a choice. It's a new
faith.
beginning and adventure.
It's the new beginning. It's our new chapter. This is the card that I dislike the most. It's the Seven of Swords.
Well, that's collectively. It's a stuff's about to hit the fan.
Yeah.
Stuff is about to hit the fan.
But what I'm getting
What are you getting from that one?
It's all again about perspective. You can look at this as the fight is over. He's picking up the swords. Another way it talks about thievery. But in this card in particular, if you look at this image, he is picking up the swords from battle.
He could be picking up the ones that matter most to him. So his thoughts and beliefs that matter most to him, but he's leaving behind what doesn't serve him anymore.
Yep. Then we have the Two of Pentacles in reverse. To me, that's a lot of unbalanced energies. So try to do your balanced due diligence in the next month as much as you can.
It's also balancing what's yours and what isn't is what I'm getting.
Yeah, that's good too.
We're tapping into the collective energy. We're tapping into the collective consciousness. And when things hit the fan, we wake up in the morning and we're all like feeling frazzled. And it sometimes, and most of the time, isn't even our energy we're feeling. We're just tapping in to everything around us. So I think part of that card is telling you to balance, you know, engaging in the narratives outside of that, but also recognizing and realizing what's yours.
And for bottom of the deck, or what I say hidden energies, what's being hidden is the Two of Cups. So to me, it's what's being hidden is we're actually are coming in unity, and they're playing it out as the opposite.
See, that it's it's how are you looking at it? It's your perspective.
So
And that's beautiful. Anybody else have any last words?
Thank you for holding space for us tonight to share our perspectives. You know, it's good to hear where everyone's coming from, and it's a nice balance of collective.
Yes, thank you. It was wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to take us off with a prayer. I'm just going to let it flow, and I'm going to let it go and let it flow and see what comes through. I really appreciate all of you being here with me, the hosts, Jackie, Laura, Heather, Danielle, Nicole. Thank you for Em and Trina for staying till the end, and all the other people in the audience. This has seriously been a wonderful event for me, and I know it's been wonderful for Heather. Dear Mother, Father, Source, we are so grateful to unify tonight under this idea of neutrality, of coming into our innocence again, of finding our vulnerability and our authenticity, of creating balance for ourselves by chasing our hearts and choosing our spirit, to not allow the fear paradigms to control us any longer, to not allow the external narratives and storylines to affect us anymore. We desire for more of us to come together in unity. We desire for more people to quote unquote awaken to your light, to your love, to the love of humanity, to the love of earth, and to everything that is. We ask for the strength to make it through these challenging times. We ask for the gumption, for the capacity, for the accountability, responsibility, ability, and capability to make it through these challenging times. and to do it with ease and grace, and to do it while we thrive. And so as old earth paradigms fall by the wayside and new earth becomes even more accessible, please allow us to enter your kingdom without fear, without trepidation, because we are all your children. We are all here as one, and we are learning just like you every single moment of our lives. And we are so grateful for the opportunity to explore ourselves, each other in these now moments. And we ask for as much ease and grace as possible so that humanity has the best chance to take advantage of the opportunity that it has right now to expand and grow. We love you so very much, and we love all of us so very much, and we're so grateful. So be it, that will be done.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yes.
you, everyone.
Thank
You guys are
you.
amazing.
Have a great night.
Have
You
a good
too. And
night,
thank you,
guys.
Laura,
Yeah,
for joining for
love
the
you
first
guys.
time.
Yes.
Yes, love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Love.
Bye.
Bye.